my name is Greg Andrus. I'm the Vice President of the Democratic Party of Evanston. This is part of our video interview series with all of the municipal candidates for this upcoming election cycle. I'm here today with Misty Witenberg, who is running for the clerk candidate for the city clerk's race. If you're not a member yet, you can sign up on our website, evanstondems.com, to become either a dues-paying member or a membership or get a membership by volunteering. The election for the endorsement will begin on January 17th, and ballots are due back in on January 23rd. So ballots will be going out for that fairly shortly now. Misty, why don't you take the first couple of minutes here and introduce yourself, give people a chance to know who you are.
Hi, so I'm Misty Witenberg, and I have 3 children. So I have a kindergartner at Lincolnwood, I have a 7th grader at Haven, and I have a college freshman ETHS graduate, so wide range there. We're relative newcomers to Evanston. We have lived here about 7-8 years. And previous to moving here, I've been quite active in state and federal level politics and advocacy. Public advocacy is really my jam. And but in Evanston, I saw not only do you have more opportunity to make a difference at a local level. Evanston is like kind of a great, I don't want to say petri dish, but people pay attention to what happens in Evanston. It's small enough that you can actually, one person or a group can really start something, but it's also significant enough in culture that, other people follow. So that was really exciting to me. So I really started throwing my back into local government.
All right, thank you so much. So the first question I have, just to start us off, the position you're running for is clerk, which is a lot different from any of the other races that are on the ballot this year. So I just wanted to start off by tell us a little bit about how you see that role specifically and what your priorities will be.
So the clerk is, as I've said before, there's 270 statutory duties. So and a lot of them are clerical. So there's a lot of duties like signing, administering oaths, signing a lot of things. You sign all the ordinances, you sign all bonds, you sign a lot of contracts. So there's not a lot of, policy-ish things happening there. And really for anyone who's been, who watches, any of my involvement in city government, I seldom push for a policy. I'm more about process, consistent, equitable process, citizens' rights. These are all democratic ideals. So I'm not sure I've ever said, you should vote for this or you should not vote for this. But as far as that is something that I would like to continue for the clerk's office and would. My priorities for me are, I see a lot of times, we see the packets that council members have, and I would like to see more evidence-based policymaking. And that's something the clerk can facilitate because we have the majority of the records. So when there are times when they're considering a proposal or any issue, really, if their information they're receiving is not complete or holistic or doesn't show, for example, the variety of effects that will impact Evanston residents and businesses, I will do my very best to ensure they have an impartial, well-rounded wealth of information so that they can make an informed decision. And then information to the public is something else that I'm very passionate about. We hear transparency just thrown around all the time. But to me, transparency as it regards the clerk's office regards FOIA. So a lot of FOIA is not happening in the clerk's office right now, and I have to deal with that to start. But I've had many candid conversations with our city attorneys. I do think we're quite aligned in a lot of ways, even though they have different restraints. And so working with them, getting FOIA back to at least meeting minimum requirements under law would be excellent start for me. Same, you know, the clerk is a FOIA officer, and generally, and I would be also an OMA, an Open Meetings Act officer. So there's a lot of compliance issues there where, particularly with closed minute sessions and audio recordings that haven't been reviewed for a very long time, you're supposed to do it less, you know, semi-annually, at least once a year or less, or excuse me, or more. And so I will be sort of, I'm trying to think of a nice way, politely auditing our records to see where we're late. And, you know, if staff and I have don't see eye to eye, I will have access to the Attorney General Public Access Counselor. It's a little more expedited if you are an officer. And so I'll be using that as a resource, you know, when we just have questions or can't agree or are interpreting things differently. And that way we can be getting people the information they need, notice, ability to participate in meetings if they choose to. And yeah, public participation and making that available and to informally participate is probably what I am absolutely most passionate about.
Thank you. So you had mentioned a couple of things in there, and one of them ties into my next question. So the clerk's role as a FOIA officer is something that's come up in city council meetings a lot lately, and it's been fairly contentious. How do you plan on, you know, smoothing things over or just making that less of a fractious relationship between the city council and the city clerk, while still providing the accountability and the transparency that you have over city council business?
Right. So I actually have already started engaging in relationships with some of the council members, or I should say candidates. I already have relationships with some of they've been varied across the current incumbents, but reaching out to new council members, sometimes it's easier before they're already in office to know who you can work with, where you can cooperate, where you might have issues. And it's, you know, it's not, of course, it's hectic campaign time, but candidates are eager to get out information when they're candidates and more reluctant when they're council members. So I just find it's a better time. I think the way I would start approaching it is, again, I would like to work with staff and as well as council members, but I think that we need to sort of look into the process of how that decision was made to remove the FOIA duties from the clerk. Now, I would approach it in the exact same way as I would approach anything else. Response times have increased. There are far more appeals to the Attorney General. So those are some indications that we need to address something. Now, whether there may be benefits to this, the way we've done it, you know, they split some duties into records offices. I certainly think the law department has a very important role to play in evaluating certain documents. So I think in an ideal world, we would be looking at all of the information. I would present it, you know, as objectively as I could. And I imagine any non-objectiveness or other side, you know, arguments that the law department would be more than happy to make in my place. And then it's a policy decision, so it has to be made by council. But just because I'm not exactly a stakeholder, because it would be my public service, but I have some role in it. I would put out my best argument, but really I would say you really have to make your decision on the information, on the evidence we have. And you know, analysis, what do we see happening, who is most affected by not having this information, who's not getting what they need, and fill those gaps.
So ultimately, would you like to see the FOIA duties returned to the clerk's office, or?
Yeah, I mean, if I was being completely honest without knowing anything ahead of time, I think that it's fared far better in the clerk's office. I have a very robust knowledge of FOIA, and I'm a stickler for following the rules. So I think that it would be in very good hands. But one person, I'm never in favor of one person having all the power. So I would, just if I was not going to be clerk and it was going to have to be someone else I trusted, then I would want there to be, benchmarks, people paying attention to how I was handling it, and I'm sure there will be. And but that's good, right? A solution. But yes, I think that it's antithetical for city attorneys to be also have sole control of the Freedom of Information Act, because their job is really antithetical to they're really trying to prevent release of damaging information, and it puts them in a difficult spot too. I know, even just from my conversations with them.
Thank you very much. So one of the other points you had touched on earlier was that the office really is less of a legislative position and more of an administrative position. So given that you'll be carrying out policy rather than crafting policy, what areas do you see that the clerk's office has the ability to make changes?
Well, again, really the change that we can make as far as it regards is public participation, opening new avenues, finding, we had 6 resolutions passed right at the start of 2019 that restricted public participation. So that's technically a policy issue, but something that the clerk does have a role in facilitating new avenues. And we also had a situation, it was a very difficult 4 years just across the board. This isn't exclusive to city government, but there's a real polarization. And I mean, if we know anything, that's not just in the federal government over the last few days. And we really need to be, if we're really going to be shaping effective policy solutions, then I think I would see my role in bringing in participation of as many voices as possible. And so I also would want to be educating the public. Now, I'm not an attorney. I have a legal education, but I'm not a JD. So, so it's not advising so much as educating. Here, we are a managerial form of government. Here is what the Attorney General says your rights are under OMA. So educating the public so they can actually advocate for themselves and for others who might not be able to advocate for themselves. And then, you see the record keeping itself is important to policy, because those are the documents you're looking at. Okay, well, what was the legislative history? What was the intent? Why did we do this? What were we trying to comply with? Because we've had some really inconsistent interpretations of the exact same, intent or statute, or I guess it's code here, ordinances. So I think that's really important. I've never been one to tell people how they should vote. I'm more about the process and ensuring that voices are heard and considered. And people disagree. That's important also in a democracy, as long as people aren't feeling shut out.
So one of the other duties of the clerk's office is to help run elections here in Evanston, and this is in tandem with the county clerk's office. I wanted to hear what plans you had to make elections more accessible to Evanston residents.
Oh, that is an excellent question. And one thing that I know that we've had some need for is we have very long lines. We have seniors and we have people who are more mobily fragile, having a way, but they really like to come. Like they come, it's especially for seniors, it's a social situation. It's also nice to see who's out voting. So I understand why they would come and why they would stand in line. Having chairs, dedicated chairs to people so that they could be part of that, and you can see some of them are really suffering. But again, a lot of it has to do with ensuring people are educated about how to vote. When how to get mail-in ballots, how to register from the start, how to, if they want to vote early, what are the hours? Because, you know, we have weekend hours and a lot of people haven't known that. So one of the things I was sort of discussing before, educating people, especially when it comes to elections, I want to ensure that I'm actually sending out emails. You know, you get messages from like ward newsletters. I would like to do a newsletter from the clerk, a sort of know your government, but particularly around election time, it's, sorry, my computer went off. How all the various ways that you can vote and register. And also, you know, if you want to be a candidate information. Again, I think especially when we've paid attention to these last election hearings, it's not ever the clerk's job to advise, but they have a role in educating through providing information. So that's what I can do, and that's what I'm doing now. It's really just a continuation in a different way.
So speaking of, you know, the elections, and I have to bring this up because it's kind of a unique scenario even this year. There are 6 candidates running for clerk right now, but only one of them is on the ballot. You're running as a write-in. Is ballot access something that the clerk's office can help people with or have a role in the future?
Well, it would be, and I know that this is being done in part. Again, we can't advise, but we can say, these are the things that you need to have. Especially this binding situation seems people get very confused, and it is, I have to say, you know, when you are turning in petitions, it's really overwhelming. All the, you know, if it comes down to a stapler, that's going to be the issue. I wasn't affected by ballot access. I actually was a regular candidate. You know, I started petitioning in August, and when we had a lot of potential regular candidates, and I dropped out at first I didn't want to split a vote. There were some candidates that I did not think would be as good for FOIA. And then when we were back down to 1, I don't love that either. Like, I think people should have choices. So, so ballot access, I'm starting to go on a tangent, so I'm going to stop myself. But
you're actually answering my next question. But
okay, go ahead, please.
Yeah, it was talking about how every election cycle, it seems there's always these cases that go to court over what seems to the average voter the smallest issue, staples or stamps. So I was going to ask, what can the clerk's office do to streamline the process for first-time candidates?
Having papers out, this is what you need. You know, you must have this receipt, and of course having it advanced, because, you know, some things, financial disclosures, they have to send to the county and get a receipt for that. But having a paper on the table, if for binding, for example, having a picture of the way acceptable bindings. It gets really difficult because you start drawing the line between advising, but if you're not telling a specific person what to do, and you are, the state and county put out a lot of resources, you could almost print one of those out. Sometimes they put a lot of extra information, so having, you know, I can send candidates who, that gets tricky too, but I can have papers on the countertop, and I can have more information available that they can read and look through themselves. And that way I'm not the person speaking to them. And yeah, the streamlining is difficult because there's a lot of protocol you have to follow for elections. You know, who gets there first, the lotteries. So my ability to influence what time people arrive or how many people are waiting is difficult a lot, especially at the beginning. But I can follow the rules to a T and make sure that everyone knows the rules coming on in, and that will streamline it.
Oh, thank you. So the next question is one that I like to ask all of the non-incumbents, although you're not challenging anybody right now. I wanted to ask, why clerk? So of all of the different races that are on the ballot this year, and I understand you had run for alderman, 4 years ago. Why clerk this time?
Well, it's funny because I have not, being a politician has not really been an aspiration of mine. I don't have my sights set on, you know, state senate or anything like that. I had a lot of people approach me for clerk. I don't know if I would have thought about it. I think we all learned a lot in the last few years about I mean, we've had the benefit of having quite a few really great clerks, and especially the last 2 or 3 have been very different. So we've seen, you know, what people did that helped, and what people did that maybe wasn't as helpful. But if anyone knows me, they know that I am extremely, almost to a fault, detail oriented. And the clerk's office is actually a place where that's beneficial. You know, tedium is what I thrive on. So everything that people don't like to do, you know, reading disclaimers, I love it. I love finding out, you know, what are all the rules? What are all the rules? Because most critical factor for equity. So filing all of that, I mean, I don't know that I can say that I'm an amazing filer relative to anybody else, but I am an intensely good organizer. And I think most importantly is that again, I just have a robust knowledge. I'm very passionate about making sure that all people in the public are able to have access to information and feel like they can come to the clerk's office and get information when they need. So it's in a lot of ways sort of a perfect position that I'd never thought about before.
Okay, and as to my last couple of questions here, though you're not running against him, he's running for a different position. I like to ask the challengers, the non-incumbents, what's one decision of your predecessor that you like, and one that you think could be improved, or one decision that you would have done differently?
Yeah, so I'm going to go in reverse order if you don't mind. A policy that or a decision that I think I would not have made, and it would be nice to get back, was, and again, things are a little unknown about how some of these things happen, was Clerk Reed's decision. I do like the idea of having, you know, a one-stop shop for passports, and if you need vital records, I would like to bring a lot of those things back to the clerk's office. And it's also, you know, right across the hall from the collector's office. So it's sort of, you know where to go if you need something basically in the city that's, you know, administrative. Clerk Reed and I definitely, he has had his advocacy for freedom of information, which, you know, as we were talking about before, it's the clerk is not a policy position. It's really what you're advocating for is what's within your realm, and that doesn't include legislation. I'm sorry?
I'm sorry to interrupt you for a second there. I'm getting a lot of lag on this. So I think I've lost a couple of seconds of you answering that question. Can you start it from the beginning, and I'll try to get a clean recording?
Sure.
There's a little bit of network problems, I think.
No problem. So start from the beginning of that answer?
Yeah, I had heard the first half of it, and you had started to answer the second half of it when when things started getting jittery. I'm sorry,
okay.
It's Zoom.
Okay. Yeah, so I was saying a decision that I wouldn't have made, or and I'm not sure how this all happened, but the clerk's office lost a lot of services. I like the idea of having passports and vital records, all of those things in the clerk's office, and I think Clerk Reed made a decision to have some of those in other areas. And then the decision, and really series of decisions that he's made, was to really advocate for FOIA and for people's rights to information, and he and I are quite aligned in that way.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have a few minutes, a few extra minutes here. So if there's anybody who has a question that they want to ask, they can just send it to me in chat. So Misty, why don't you take a few minutes while people ask their questions, and just give us a quick closing.
Oh, closing, I hadn't really thought of that. So again, I just would want to stress that I'm here to serve the public. I'm already in that role now, but in the clerk's office, it would be official. So, you know, things have been difficult the last few years. We've had a lot of, you know, even between residents and between different politicians and staff, that things can feel very contentious. But I would really want people to know that I'm here as an assistant to all, to serve all. So everyone will be welcome. Everyone can feel fine to come in. I love to debate. I love to discuss. So come in the clerk's office if you want to have information, if you need service, or if you just want to chat.
All right, thank you very much. So I haven't gotten no questions from the audience today. So Misty, thank you so much. I wanna thank you again for coming and joining and speaking to our members.
It's been so great. Thank you, Greg, for including me.
All right, have a great evening.
You too.